According to Jeff Schultz of The Athletic, the Atlanta Falcons are looking to deal possibly one of the best wide receivers in NFL history in Julio Jones. Depending on where you want to put Larry Fitzgerald in terms of the GOAT wide receiver conversation, I think that Julio Jones, at bare minimum, is a top 3 receiver in NFL history. And at least up to this point in his career, he's been the most dominant wide receiver that we've seen on the field since he entered the league. And it sucks that the Falcons franchise is not going to have that cornerstone anymore if they do end up dealing Julio Jones somewhere around the league to go into this new era of football that they're going to be playing. Now, there are 6 teams who, in this report by, what is his name, Jeff Schultz? By Jeff Schultz, he gave 6 teams that could possibly be in the market for Julio Jones and could possibly make that deal, hopefully before the beginning of this season. The one team that Jeff Schultz noted, and the one team that I'm going to say has the least possible chance out of these 6 teams to get Julio Jones, is the Tennessee Titans. And it's mostly because of the cap situation that the Tennessee Titans have in their own roster to deal with. And I just don't know if there's any player really that the Atlanta Falcons are going to be asking for from the Tennessee Titans. I mean, maybe draft picks are what Atlanta is going to be coveting over these next 2 to 3 years, but I think a lot of the kind of players that they're going to be coveting in a trade, especially for somebody like Julio Jones, who is possibly the most valuable player on their offensive side of the ball, they're going to be coveting a lot of defensive players, and they're going to be coveting a lot of players who can at least just contribute, whether it be in the back end of the secondary or whether it be the pass rush. And Tennessee really does not have a lot of either of those players. I mean, Kevin Byard is a solid safety, but Atlanta at this point needs to be doing a lot more than just getting solid players. They need to be getting great players to take this defense to a new level and start winning games on that side of the ball. Now, the team that I think has the 5th best chance at getting Julio out of these 6 teams is the Indianapolis Colts. I just don't see, unless they want to give up Darius Leonard, which just wouldn't really make sense for them, unless they wanted to give up some other young pieces on that defensive side of the ball. I just think that they are in love with a lot of the guys on that defensive side of the ball, and they don't really want to give any of them up. So I just don't think Indianapolis is going to give it up. If they give up draft picks, then it would make sense for Indy to do. They don't really have a true go-get-em number 1 wide receiver. Michael Pittman is there. T.Y. Hilton is there. They've got some solid options on that offensive side of the ball, but they just don't have a true number 1 receiver. So it would make sense for them to do. Now, the team out of these 6 that I think has the best or 4th best chances of getting Julio Jones is the New England Patriots. And the Patriots have somewhat sort of the same dilemma as the Titans and the Indianapolis Colts have. I just don't know if New England really has a lot of players defensively that they are willing to give up to get Julio Jones. Stephon Gilmore is on that side of the ball. Devin McCourty is on that side of the ball. Kyle Duggar is a young piece that could be in the back end for Atlanta's secondary for many years to come. But I also don't know if they really have a true pass rusher to give up. Matt Judon is there, but he kind of was their big name free agency acquisition, so I don't really think that is in the cards for Atlanta or New England to do. However, New England does have some options offensively to send back to Atlanta if they did want to do something like that. They could send them N'Keal Harry and Sony Michel, 2 young pieces who, yeah, they haven't really stepped up in their short-term stays in New England so far, but there's a chance that you put them in a change of scenery and have them playing for Matt Ryan and have them playing for Atlanta, that they go off, especially given the fact that Sony Michel played his college football in Georgia. He's used to being in Atlanta probably, and it would be a solid fit for those 2 guys, but it doesn't seem like it's that close of a chance for New England. Now, these top 3 teams that I'm going to be talking about, I think, have the best chance at being able to pull off a trade for Julio Jones, and that's the Los Angeles Chargers coming in at the number 3 spot. I think when you look at their offensive side of the ball, they're really close to being able to say that they're a championship contender. Their offensive line has filled out really well over these past few years, and defensively, they have a few players that I think they could be fine with giving up. I don't think they'd give up anybody like Joey Bosa. However, if they did decide that Joey Bosa is a guy that they're going to have to give up, it really would only take him and maybe somebody like, just a backup pass rusher, maybe somebody like Kyler Fackrell, somebody like that who can at least maybe just say, hey, this is a pass rushing threat that we're going to give you. At linebacker, they're pretty set too. So I mean, maybe give up somebody like Drew Tranquil who could just go and play linebacker for the Falcons. I don't see them giving up somebody like a Derwin James just because they haven't really seen a top what he looks like at his top game. Maybe somebody like Nasir Adderley would be a really good option for the Falcons to target just with that speed and how today's NFL is played on the offensive side of the ball. You really cannot have enough speed defensively, especially in that back end. So I think the Chargers are the team to really, one really key factor to look at in this Julio Jones saga. The number 2 team that I have being able to make a trade out of these 6 teams that were given to us by, what's this guy's name again? Jeff Schultz of The Athletic, because he somehow knows the 6 teams. The Baltimore Ravens. And I think this is because when you look at the Baltimore Ravens, they got a lot of aging vets. They got guys like Calais Campbell. They got guys like, I mean, if you look at that secondary, they got a lot of corners. I mean, Jimmy Smith is a very aged corner at this point in his career, but if you look at the other corners that are on this team, you got Marlon Humphrey, you got Marcus Peters, you got some decent back end players when you look at Chuck Clark and Deshaun Elliott, who have been there the past couple of years. They don't have a lot of pass rushing threat to really be able to offer to the Atlanta Falcons other than Calais Campbell. However, with where Calais Campbell is in his career in terms of being able to be a solid vet in the room, a lot of the guys that are in Atlanta right now, they either have had to go through their career, especially when you look at guys like Deion Jones and all the corners that are on that team, Kendall Sheffield. Nobody really on this team has had a vet in their rooms with them to really lead them along the way and show them how to play the game of football at an NFL level. And I think if you if you trade Julio Jones to the Baltimore Ravens, yes, Calais Campbell and Jimmy Smith maybe aren't going to give you the same amount of value on the field as Julio Jones is going to give you, but at least off the field and in terms of a game prep standpoint and off the field standpoint, I think those two guys really could serve a big role for this Atlanta Falcons team if they do trade Julio Jones. Now, the number 1 team I think has the best chance at trading for Julio Jones out of the 6 teams that were given to us by Mr. Jeff Schultz of The Athletic is the San Francisco 49ers. And there's a lot of factors to this. There's the factor of the 49ers have a lot of young wide receivers to exchange Julio Jones with, whether it be Deebo Samuel, which I don't think it would be Deebo, but I mean, if it is, then it's Deebo Samuel or it's Brandon Ayuk. Or, I mean, they got a lot of young tight end or wide receivers on this team. They got a lot of young tight ends too. But not only do they have some young wide receivers, they've got some, safety depth. Someone like a Jimmy Ward, that they could offer in a deal for Julio Jones. They got a lot of young pass rushers as well. Namely, Eric Armstead and Dee Ford would probably be the guys that Atlanta would look at for a trade for Julio Jones. They got some offensive line depth, whether you look at Laken Tomlinson. I mean, I don't think they would give up Tomlinson, but there's a chance at that. Weston Richburg could be a move that they could make, especially given the fact that Alex Mack just left from Atlanta to go to San Francisco. There's corner depth. There's really depth at every position on the San Francisco 49ers team that the Atlanta Falcons can target. And if you're the San Francisco 49ers, if you're going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo during the season, or if you're just going to go the whole year with Jimmy Garoppolo as your starting quarterback, then at least get him a true number 1 wide receiver like a Julio Jones, who could make it as easy as possible on Jimmy Garoppolo to play at his best capabilities while he's still on the team. Now, one team that I would actually be super interested to see trade for Julio Jones, this is just a completely, I don't have any sort of article to bring up to talk about this. If Julio Jones were to somehow find his way being traded to the Seattle Seahawks and play with DK Metcalf, I don't know what any team defensively is going to do to try to stop that offense. Not only do you have Russell Wilson throwing the ball, you have DK Metcalf on one end of the field, probably being able to make a catch over any defender in the league and being able to outrun any defender in the league. Then you have Julio Jones on the other side, basically doing the exact same thing, but maybe at a little bit of a declined level from what DK Metcalf does. You've got some other wide receivers on this team who I'm not going to bring up Tyler Lockett because I think in exchange for Julio Jones, they might have to give up Tyler Lockett just because he's a young receiver who, can at least be productive for the Atlanta Falcons. But for the Seahawks, you got anywhere from, Freddie Swain, Penny Hart. There's a lot of other wide receivers on this team that are young and fast that could at least kind of replace Tyler Lockett on that kind of standpoint. But this is really just the fact of, imagine an offense with DK Metcalf and Julio Jones. It just seems absolutely nasty, absolutely scary. And it could be something that leads Seattle Seahawks to a Super Bowl appearance. With all that being said, that's going to be the video for me. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't, make sure you leave a dislike. If you're a fan of any of these 7 teams that I brought up or any of the other 25 NFL teams that think that they should have a shot at Julio Jones, if you're a Texans fan like I am, then there's no damn shot at getting Julio Jones, but that's fine. Yeah. If you're a fan of any team, let me know in the comments who your favorite team is, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.